Okay, it's 9 on the dot. I'm going to start because we're going to do the very simple bits first. As usual, in any live session, you're welcome to put up your hand, ask questions, interrupt, as long as it's topic related, you know, not so much around what your plans are for the weekend, but more so around what you want to do with BABOK. I'm just keep getting people in. So 5 tips to prepare you. Now, just to give you a little bit of a starter. So those who've just arrived, if you can just say hi via chat would be great, just so we know. Like I say, I recognize a lot of these names. So IIBA is has a special on the exams this year. So by the end of December, if you do write any of your exams, I think it's like a 25% off. I'm not sure of the exact figure. So those who are motivated to do that, that's one of the benefits. It's just cheaper on the exam day. So you have to actually write within the month, something along those lines. So do use that if you feel that you're ready. And for those who in our class, you know, if you want to check with me, if I think you're ready, I'm more than helpful. Hey, all the way from Hawaii. I'm more than happy to help you in just determining your readiness. So please don't be afraid to ask if I think you'll be all good. All right, so we're going to look at a few things today. We're going to look at understanding the structure of your BABOK. You have to understand this to do well in any exam. Understanding the competencies. I go on about competencies, and sometimes I'm not sure that it all, you know, gets through. Understanding how the questions are asked. Your practice. I suppose it should be an S. And then decide on your exam day. So these are really important concepts. Hi, Dan. Nice to see your face. Anthony, Said. All good. Hey. All right. So obvious tip 1, it'll get deeper than this, is make sure you've got all of your materials, right? BABOK guide, everything. Make sure you have everything. If you are, you know, going through our course or even going through some of the free materials that we have, just make sure you have all of that copied and certified, because remember what you do in here in your exam is you've got an exam around your BABOK. So the BABOK guide is what you've been tested on. And an important, all the way from Zimbabwe, Anthony, welcome. An important component of your BABOK is you're tested on BABOK, not on your experience. I say this a lot to CBAPs. Please don't think because you're an experienced business analyst, you can just ace the exam, just go and sit it and ace it. It's not going to be in your favor. Rather, focus on what the BABOK is saying. So you absolutely have to understand the structure of BABOK, including the techniques, the underlying competencies, which they don't put in BABOK, really. They put it in the actual IIBA site. So you do have the competencies, but the links to the competencies aren't in BABOK. But you are definitely questioned around your competencies. And then, as you know, we have all of these tasks. Now, every task has a competency. So every time you are performing a task, they are testing how competent you are at performing that particular task. So it really is important that you remember these task names. And, you know, there are some people who say, you don't have to memorize BABOK, and it's true, you don't have to memorize BABOK, but if you can't remember some of the key terms, then it becomes a real challenge in the actual exam, you know. So when they ask about elicitation or they ask about doing current state analysis, it gives you a clue as to what you're going to be questioned on. So don't ignore that side of the exam. Don't ignore that you need to remember the terms that are used in BABOK. So I'm not advocating memorize the whole BABOK, but I am advocating that you understand the terms in BABOK and you understand them well. All right, so now we're going to get to the hard bit, understanding your learning objectives and requirements. So everybody is tested on BABOK, everyone. So BABOK is all the same no matter where you are. Everyone is tested on BABOK. However, the tests get harder depending on what you're doing. So you're all learning BABOK. That's not going to change. But the way that you're being tested is going to get harder as you go through, like, for instance, those who are doing CBAP, a couple of you here, you're all going to have quite challenging questions to deal with. So as I mentioned at the very start, for those who've just arrived, I'm actually going to start with CBAP level questions and we'll drill it down rather than drill it up in a moment. So you're all measured on different things in BABOK. So ECBAs are measured on how well they understand the key terms. An important thing to remember here, do you understand what BABOK is saying? That's what you're measured on. ECBAs are measured on in what simple context would you apply some of these things from BABOK. So fairly simple, but still kind of questioning your ability as a BA. And then CBAP is going, all right, I'm going to pose a whole bunch of scenarios at you, and I'm expecting you to draw the information from BABOK into your head. And so quite different. So this is what it looks like. ECBA, you have three things you need to be able to show that you can do. You need to remember some of the facts, the basic knowledge of BABOK. You need to understand. So this is what understand, recognize the key elements of the competency, and apply the rules. In other words, if BABOK says this is a predictive approach, then that's what you choose. Even though you might think that the word waterfall is appropriate in the exam question, you have to choose whatever is prescribed in BABOK. So that's ECBA. Everything that's in BABOK, that's what they'll be asking you about. CCBA, you have to apply, you have to analyze, and you have to evaluate what questions there are. So you have to sense make some areas. So you, like in a particular scenario, you might say, okay, they might ask you, what would so-and-so do in this particular scenario? And so you are looking at situations in context. So not just people should do this, which is what you would do in ECBA. You're having to contextualize it. You're having to say, oh, but this stakeholder is not involved in this project, and therefore we're not going to be doing a requirement for them. That's the type of context you have to provide. You also have to recommend actions, so simple actions. So because this person is not involved in this project, their requirements are not going to be used in this project. That simple. And then applied knowledge, well, what skills would you need to use? So what techniques, what, like, would you run a workshop? Would you run, what would you do in that situation? And remember, the answers are all in BABOK. So even though they're giving you a situation to deal with, you still have to understand the way BABOK thinks in that sense. And then for CBAP, everything you're going to do is about thinking in context. And I do want to say that BABOK wants to test your reasoning. So in other words, you're not being questioned on how much you can remember. They actually put you in a scenario where there might be one or two questions that could actually fit, they could be correct, but you have to look for the most correct answer based on what is prescribed in BABOK. So the challenge with CBAP, and this is why, and I can't understate this, it is a difficult exam. So please, CBAPs, don't just run into it and go crazy. You can, but probably your outcome won't be as what you might want. So you have to take a case by case as if you're a senior business analyst and you're looking at a case study and you have to make decisions. And so everything about CBAP is around what decision would you make, and based on what the BABOK guide is advising. Remember, it's a guide, so you would use what you've learned from the guide, but you'd still have to make your own decisions. It wouldn't be like, here's the answer. And so I'm going to show you what that looks like in a minute. So you really are looking at analyzing, evaluating, and creating rules. And by creating rules, it means creating a new way to do something. So the organization has been doing it in this way, and now as a BA, senior BA, you're looking at it and going, oh, actually, we shouldn't be constructing it like this. We should actually be doing this a little bit better than what we have done before. All right, so next level. How would you construct your questions? And this is where I said, I'm going to almost decompose this. So we're going to start at a CBAP level. And this is been done by Casey, one of our learners. He's done amazing assignments. So CBAPs, you're going to see that come in very soon into your assignments. I think I mentioned it to a couple of you. And what he's done is he deconstructed the element. Okay, so remember in BABOK, we've got some language that we need to look at. We've got the task, and under each task, we have a whole bunch of elements or subtasks. I think it's easier to explain as a subtask. So when you're preparing, you've got a list of things that you need to do. BABOK calls this elements. So what he did, so he's recently certified, was he set up a scenario. So he goes, these are the elements that we are discussing. This was, I think, yeah, 5, no, gain consensus. And then he looked at the particular, and you guys do have the download available for you, you know, that spreadsheet. So he brought all of the pieces of that task together and then said, what am I being measured on, right? So I have to have advanced knowledge in this particular area of BABOK. And his advice is you do it for every single element. That might take a while. It might not be the best approach for you, but that was his advice. And I do advise that when you're doing assignments, you at least choose one and deep dive. At least. It's about learning. It's not so much around having all the answers. It's about learning around what the best answers might be. And then you've got, and so then you look at the competency. And this is why it's so important to know what you're being tested on. So in each task and in each element, everyone, including, ECBA, CCBA, has a list of competencies. So every test is testing, are you competent of doing a particular thing? So you see he's listed the competencies here. So business analysts are responsible for ensuring that stakeholders have the approval. So he set this all up, and I don't need to necessarily read every bit. But he's chosen one component of BABOK and he's created, so he's brought these components together and then he's constructed a question. And so he's looking at a scenario around, this is what's happening and what would you pull together. So as you can see, the question, so ECBAs, don't freak out. Like, you will not be asked something like this, right? But the CBAPs, you will be. So if you want a free card, go for it. So as you can see, there's a whole setup in the questions. So the who, the what, the why, the when, the how. Typically, your questions consist of 3 of those: the who, the what, how, or when, or why. So it's almost like writing a user story. And so this scenario is based on that. Let me just admit. So the construction of this particular is at a CBAP level. And for those in class, I will actually include that. So all of this will be included. You can download it. Now, does anyone want to venture based on this, what type of question would a ECBA be asked? What would it look like? Is this Paul Ben? Maybe not. Can't hear me. It's a Paul. All right.
This is a Paul Webster. Let's just join.
Paul Webster. Okay. Just wondering which Paul you are. All right. So we're trying to go through, what do you think an ECBA would be asked? Any ideas?
This is David. Maybe I'm just venturing a guess here. ECBA might be asked to define the type of stakeholder the UX architect is in this scenario, maybe to just try to define who or what a given component or aspect of the question or the text might be, and not maybe so much thinking critically about it.
Exactly. Perfect. Yay. You get a badge, Paul. So that's exactly what would happen. So as you can see, this is a complex scenario, talking about multiple elements that would be, you'd have to pull information from your BABOK guide in order to really understand those elements. Whereas with ECBA, you might be asked about the stakeholder or a particular technique, and it would probably be a very short question about that size. So it'll be a really short question that will be very particular to you, just remembering and understanding some of the key things in BABOK. So ECBAs, you won't get asked something like this, but CBAPs definitely. So can anyone venture, what would a CCBA be asked in an exam? What would that look like? So quiet, this group.
Maybe we haven't had quite enough exposure yet to better answer your questions.
Yeah, probably. Who said that? Was that Paul again, or was it someone else? Oh, yeah. Okay, so with your CCBA, you're going to be asked a little bit more than what your ECBA is asked. You're certainly not going to be asked at this level. So you might have to say, what would the element be and who the user would be, or what element with what technique. So you would have to start pulling a little bit more information. But yeah, it would definitely just be a bit more than that. So it wouldn't take you too far down the rabbit hole of the scenario, but you definitely have to work off some kind of case. So what are you doing and with whom are you, working with, and making the right suggestions and really considering what the problem is that you wanting to deal with. Sorry, I see. Building off David's comments, it may be. Okay, yeah. So David, you were the one who spoke around the ECBA, is that correct?
Yes, that was me.
Okay. Yeah, right. No, I'm getting a bit confused between you and Paul, who's speaking. Okay, that's why I was wondering. Yes, so ECBA is spot on. I do think that with CCBA, you looking at just adding an additional element or additional part to the question. Remember, ECBA is just a single part to a single kind of statement, a single answer, and CBAP looks at multiple things. So if we just go back to what we had here, so as you can see, when we speak about each task in BABOK, you have multiple, what do they call them? It's not the elements, but you remember you have the inputs, outputs, guidelines, tools, techniques, stakeholders, etc. And so the question is constructed pulling all of these together and you making the best decision. So which of these techniques would you use? Which of these stakeholders are you speaking about? Which guidelines might come into play? Which outputs or inputs would be involved? So all of this is related to your level of learning. So everyone's learning BABOK, but some people have to learn more, or at least understand the relationships between all of those components. Okay. We're going to do a little bit of an exercise in a minute around the practice. So I'm just going to have to open up a poll. But we all know this, right? The best way, once you've learned, you have to do your drills. But I do want to say to people, you need to do at least 3 full drills, at least. So once you've gone through all the content, a lot of people do these short drills and they go, oh, I scored well, or they refer into the BABOK, and that's okay. That's all part of learning. But if you want to prepare for an exam, you have to simulate the exam. So you can't use any of your tricks or, workarounds or anything like that. You've actually got to go into that situation where you say, for instance, with CBAP, it's 3.5 hours. You've got to be able to write a test for 3.5 hours. And I mean, essentially you've got 2 or 3 minutes to write that exam. So, or that test. So considering how long some questions might be, you've got to be able to be on your game for 3.5 hours. There have been people who have completed the exam in like 2 hours, but that's because they spent heaps of time studying. So you can have 2 strategies. You can have, I'm going to practice as much as I can, and that's going to be my approach to try as a memory ability, or I'm going to study the BABOK end to end and then just be able to write the exam. You will never be able to only learn BABOK. You will never be able to pass BABOK only learning BABOK. It's just not going to work. But you can decide that your drills is your strategy to get your exam going. I always like to say to people, please remember that the badge is important. Now, this sounds crazy, right? But I was watching this webinar on this lady who has achieved amazing things, right? And one of them is she just decided to become a black belt. And I was like, okay. I think she was like 35 or something like that. So it wasn't like a childhood dream or whatever. It was just a challenge that she picked up. Anyway, she's done heaps of stuff, but that was one of them. And what stood out for me is you can go and you can do an exercise and practice to be a black belt and do all of that. But without the badge, you don't have the story behind it. And so this is why I encourage people to get the badge. It's not because you won't be able to do this just off learning. You absolutely will, but sometimes it's about the recognition. So I do always advise anyone, if you spend all this time learning, get the badge to prove that you've learned it. I think that that's really important. So obviously you're going to need to read. You're going to need to have lots of short tests, and I do think you need to do them chapter by chapter. I think before you write any of your exams, but especially your CBAP, you're going to need to have 2 hours a day where you're doing these short drills. So ECBA, you can probably do a prep within 1 week. So once you've completed your course and completed all your learning and your assignments or all of the things that you need to learn, you could probably get your drills going and get ready within 1 to 2 weeks quite safely. With CCBAs, you just double that. And with CBAPs, you can do drills over 3 weeks if you are doing full drills at least 3 times and you're scoring over 75%. That's really your measure. It's can I sit for 3.5 hours and score above what I'm expecting to score, you know? So we don't get told what you score in terms of the IIBA. We don't get told of a percentage, but we think it's about 68% per learning area. So each chapter you have to pass. And this is important because a lot of people don't realize that you have to pass every single chapter individually. They think, well, as a collective, I'll just get 68% and, you know, I'll be fine. And I'll focus on the big questions, you know, requirements and those type of things. But, and typically this is where ECBAs trip up, especially on chapter 5. I've seen it over and over again. They don't put enough effort into understanding the requirements life cycle and prioritization and traceability, etc., and then get tripped up on that particular area. So make sure that you're doing these short tests on every chapter, because remember, you're going to be measured on every single chapter that you have to apply for. Make sure that you do a competency check. Now, the competency check, as you know, is, well, I hope you all know, assuming that a lot of people have a lot of information coming into this, your competency, if they say that you, let's just go back a minute, just to give you an idea. Let's just go to ECBA. If you have to have basic knowledge around a particular area, and you'll see that I've elaborated on this in your assignment group. If they say that you need to do that, when you look at a particular question, you must also check, well, is this about me understanding a particular tool, or is this about me just remembering this particular component? So you're going to need to break it down into just understanding what it is that you're learning. If you've gone through, you know, the course and all of the structures in your BABOK, ECBAs, you can be ready, and I'm saying this carefully because everyone's different. You can prepare to write within a week of 100% completion. You can, but you have to drill. Like, you have to test yourself to see if you can actually sit. It's only an hour exam. It's only online, so there's no Prometric center that you can use like the others. For CCBAs, I just want you to kind of work in the middle with me at the moment. For CBAPs, you absolutely need to know the complexity of BABOK, and you need to know how difficult it is going to be to actually write that, which is why your short tests are really important, but then your short test against your competency check to make sure that you're covering those competencies. Full drills, as I said, full drills are really important just so that you can be exam fit. It's not so much around how much do you know, but can you sit there for 3.5 hours in an exam? Like I said, the 1 hour ECBA, I'm sure we can all make it. A webinar's 1 hour. You know, you'll be fine. But the 3.5 hours full on thinking and 120 questions is a lot. For CCBA, you have 3 hours at 150 questions. And so you can see that the questions are simpler, but you still have to answer quite a lot. So it is still quite a lot of information to go through. And yeah, I mean, it just depends. Are there any questions around the practice tests at all from your side? Anyone?
From my side, no.
Well,
Everything is okay.
Sorry? Someone just talk, it's fine. I don't know who is talking.
Snezhana is talking
Yeah.
about your explanation. From my side, everything is perfectly clear. Only we need to work.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it boils down to. But it's what you work on that's important. And so, like I said, drills is a strategy that you can use. But if you truly want to understand it and be able to entrench it, it's constructing your questions are really important. Like, how would you put all of this together and ask a question? Because once you understand that, then it becomes simpler in the exam. That's the, because when I was talking to Casey, who, you know, who did his assignments like that, he found the exam much easier than what he was doing in his assignments. And I think that gave him the confidence as well. And everybody gets nervous before the exam, especially your CBAP. Like we all do. I cried just because I was so stressed. And I'm not a crier, actually. I know some people may think I am, but I'm definitely not. But, you know, that was his recommendation, that if you do that, then you'll build your confidence. In fact, he was so stressed before the exam that he actually said to me, maybe I should just do ECBA. And I'm like, no, you spent all these months, like literally 6-7 months studying. Why would you do that? Just, you know, give it a go and see where you go. So he was very happy with the outcome. But, you know, that hesitancy, all of that, by doing these practices, you'll reduce your hesitancy, you'll reduce your fear of the exam. And I do also want to say, please remember that exams, this isn't going to stop you from being anything that you are. So don't be afraid to take the exam. And then if it didn't work out, you just take it again. Like, it's that simple. It's not like when you're at university or when you are at school or wherever, where there's a consequence to it. There isn't. There's no consequence. So don't be afraid of the exam. You're just learning, and this is just part of it. But I mean, if you are like me, who's an A-type personality, I don't want to fail an exam. It's just purely me. So I'd like to be prepared. So if you are like that, then, you know, put the preparation in. All right, then lastly, because we, and I do have more to show you, but I will open up a different window, give you some time to talk about some things. So lastly, when we look at your exam schedule, just a simple tip. I know this sounds obvious, but choose your time. Now, one of the strategies you can do is, if you're doing these full drills, try one in the morning, try one at lunch, and try one in the evening, and just see where you score better. Now, that's not a perfect science, right? Because obviously, you know, you get in a mix of drills. So it's not going to be, it's not scientific. I'm not implying it is. But it will make a big difference in terms of you just get an idea of what it would be like to, you know, do an exam first thing in the morning versus doing it at lunchtime. So again, just simple tricks. It's not rocket science, but if you do know what time is best, like for me, you know, mid-morning is the best time to write an exam and do anything because I'm the most awake. I've had my coffee, I've had probably 3 by then, and it does work. And remember, with your exam, you're not allowed to take anything with you. It's a closed book exam, so you have to memorize things. You can take notes. So for those who are not in my course at the moment, you can download the free copy of Alan's summary of BABOK. I recommend that before every exam. Go through that, print it out if you have to, look at that, but that's going to tie in all the key things that you need to do, and that works for ECBA, CBAP, and CCBA. So always use that just before the exam. It's like a cheat sheet that's going to just remind you of all the things that you have to do. So do have a look at that. And I do advise you to book in advance because number one, again, if you're like me, that forces me to deliver on it. Otherwise, you know, I kind of plan retrospectively, like this is where I want to be then, and then I work out backwards how much time I need. Again, not all of you are like me, but if that is your character, then plan in advance. You can always change the time. I think you can, like within a week, you can't do it the day before, right? But you can reschedule. So if things do come up, you can reschedule. But if you schedule the exam, then you'll know how much learning you need to do. So when you are preparing for your exam, ECBAs, 2 hours a day for at least 1 week, 3 full drills, only after you've completed all your learning. So you can schedule backwards from there. So how much longer do I need to learn, and work your way back. I think, Hannah, you were saying in Feb, right? You're thinking of doing your exam?
Either January or February.
Yeah.
I'm aiming for maybe January. I'm hoping, fingers crossed.
Yeah. So as you get through those chapters, you would then dedicate at least a week. And when I say dedicate a week, you're looking at 2 hours a day, and then one of those days you spend a half day actually just preparing, and then you should be exam ready. And I always advise, don't do all these drills the day before. Your mind is going to be too much. Like, it's too much. Just, and I advise people, but they do it anyway because they get nervous. Rather, the better idea is to go through your summary guide and just, you know, let it come to you rather than you trying to quickly do everything. So as long as your scores in every single chapter, that's why I say if you spend 2 hours a day, every single chapter. So for CBAPs, you're probably going to need to do that for 3 weeks just to get ready. And like I said, it's all proportional. At least 3 weeks. Most of the CBAPs do their long drills over a weekend, which is not really great for, you know, family life, but you just don't get the opportunity to do 3 full drills, you know, during your work hours. And I don't advise you doing it once you've come back from work and you know, you then have children and family and all those other obligations. So just start scheduling now. Even if you're only planning to do it next year sometime, that's okay. Just start scheduling now, because life happens and things happen and you're just not going to get there. And like I said, just like this woman was saying, she got black belt. Well, she's actually called a black belt. And I think that that's, you know, really where you want to get to at the end. So for me, it's not all about the exam. It's about all the learning that you have up until the exam, but it is important that you get the badge as well. I think it's important. I think that's why you're all here at the end of the day. So just a quick journey, and then we kind of finish with this. So remember, especially CCBAs and CBAPs, please remember this. You are going to have to create your profile and do your application, and you're going to have to put in all your experience and everything before you can even apply for the exam. Remember, there's a whole process where you have to show your experience. Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Sorry, I'm only looking at people. Okay. So a lot of CBAPs go through all of this learning and do all of that, and then they panic because now they've you know, decided to write the exam, and what happens is they've now got to fill out all these forms and complete all of this history and give references and all of this. So please don't do that at the end. Do it in the beginning. And one of the strategies, if you don't quite know how the form works, I do have a copy. So this is another thing. I'm sure I've uploaded it, but if I haven't, you can just ask for it. But one of the key things with the form completion is you can go through the training and then you can actually complete the form at the same time, saying, this is where it applied, this particular area applied to me. So if you can do that sooner than later, it's better, because as I was mentioning, a lot of CCBAs and CBAP stress because now they've done all the training, but now they've got to show all the evidence of their experience. It makes more sense to start that process first. And even if you work through that process during your studies, then trying to do it at the end and write the exam, because there are occasions when you get audited. It's about 1 in 3 people get audited. So that means they check, you know, they contact your references, etc. So do keep that in mind when you are preparing. And this is the general, so you have to be eligible. In other words, you have to have your hours of training or development or working with one of the study groups or something along those lines. And then obviously create your profile, do your application, and then your exam fee. Now, exams, as I mentioned, this is got quite a big discount at the moment with the IIBA. They do it every year in December, November, December. And then taking your exam, you can schedule from when that's done, you can schedule for an entire year ahead. So you don't have to worry about doing it right now. But I do advise you to do this process earlier than later. If you are eligible and you are doing CCBA or CBAP, if you're eligible, then start that process now. Don't wait till you finish studying. You will have to obviously give a certificate of evidence of whatever you've studied, whether that's in study groups or during formal training or anything. So do bear that in mind, but that's a fairly easy thing to do if you're doing it formally. All right, so those are the 5 tips. I'm going to open up another screen in a minute, but now's a good time to ask questions. If you have any. Such a quiet group.
Hi, Deirdre. This is David. Will this presentation be made available online for your students to go back and review?
Yep. So
Okay.
go check on past webinars. I think, yeah, you would be able to view it. It takes a couple of days because, you know, I send it to our team and they decide on the priority. But yeah, you'll get it. It's Friday here, so it definitely won't be in the next couple of days. It'll only be next week sometime that the video will be available. I do advise you to go and look at the past. And by the way, past webinars are free for everyone. So you just need to log into our site and you can have a look at that. But there was one that I did earlier in the year. I don't know, it was March. Around nailing your exams, which I spoke about competencies in a little bit more detail with some examples. I highly advise that you look at that. I also, in the past webinars, have webinars with Paul Ben. This is why I asked about Paul. Which Paul was this? Paul Ben, who gives advice on CBAP certification. Then Giovanni. I had a webinar with Giovanni on writing his ECBA, and with Michael on writing his CCBA. Now, all of those anyone can watch because these are just around the exam experience, preparing for your exam, writing your exam. Simple tips like make sure that you have a glass of water, make sure that you are prepared, that the room is cleared out, those kind of tips which your examiner will give you the instructions for, and arrive, you know, log in much earlier than you think because they might ask you lots of questions. So don't log in at the last minute because they've still got to check your room and check your device and check all of those things. So really good webinars on that, and you'll find all of that under the past webinars. So I do recommend anyone, when you're at that point of, you know, preparing to write, that's what you do. Go have a look at those sessions that I had specifically on those. Just open the screen here. Any other questions, anyone? How's it going with assignments? Hoping to see a massive improvement.
Can you all hear me okay? I was trying to fix my microphone earlier. Okay, cool. So my question was, as we're moving through, and I think that this is probably noted in the course itself, but after we complete all of the materials within the portal and we're looking for that certificate from Agora as well, my job is asking me for it before I get reimbursement and things like that. Is that something where we go through there, we start working on drills and things, and then that's something that would be auto-generated, or do I need to reach out to somebody to make sure that that happens, or do you mind just a 30-second kind of spiel on how to do that?
It is auto-generated, so you have to complete everything, and you'll actually see a progress bar on the top left. So just make sure, and because I've moved the assignments into a different platform now, you just need to make sure that you say completed. So where it shows assignment in the actual course, then you just say completed, because that really is going to help you, I suppose, completed, get the certificate. So even if I haven't got your assignment on that particular day, you'll still get your certificate and you can continue. However, you can apply before you get your certificate. If you get audited, that will require the certificate, but you can apply, you know, beforehand. So, you know, you've just got to prove that you're going to be doing those hours, and that's when it's a good time to reach out to us as well. If you are going through and doing an audit, then we'll just say, no, you're on this training. So,
okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Let me just quickly check this. I wanted to show you a couple of things. Before I do this, does anyone have any other questions before I share this? I'm going to do a quick test on your OWL to see how well you know your requirements. And hopefully you're going to answer. Oh gosh, where's my mouse? Somewhere. All right, so you can see a question, right? Okay, so you can see that question.
Yep. Yeah, we can see it.
All right, ECBA level. What's the answer? Chat, hands up. Don't worry, won't be tagged. It'll just be recorded. So, all levels. What type of requirement typically high level? Who's answering?
I'm gonna
Saying
This is
A,
Paige.
yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna throw it out there as A.
Well done, Paige. You got it. So this is just your Bloom's taxonomy. And remember, we spoke about the different levels. So everyone needs to know basic knowledge. I don't know why my mouse is not working. Sorry, I'm having to use the keyboard. Next question, also about requirements. Which requirement relates to the behavior of a solution?
D.
Well done, Paige. Awesome. So D is around functional requirements, and that's around behavior of something. Really important to have a look at, the differences between the, remember we spoke about the classification. So these two are really important to understand the difference. They like asking about this, and it's also one of the tasks. Okay, now as you can see, it gets a little bit trickier as we go up the levels. Just think of building a house.
I want to say A.
Correct. You're gonna write your exam tomorrow. So obviously transitional requirements, if you remember that circle diagram that you have in BABOK chapter 2, shows you it's the process is you first need the solution requirements after you've had the stakeholder and after the business requirements. You first need the solution. You need to know what you're building to decide what the transition requirements. And remember, transition requirements, it's almost like if you renovating your house, your transition requirements are you have to move out the house and you got to get all the furniture out the way, and then there's a whole move process. It's a temporary thing. And you can only do that once there's a solution in place. So next thing, slightly more tricky, look at the top, you'll see CCBA and CBAP. So to capture the process of providing a circuit, the business analyst observed an ordering supervisor for half a day. The result of the information could then be incorporated into the following: what type of requirements? So we got a technique here. Remember, we've got two elements going on here. We've got what the BA is doing. We've got a particular person involved, a stakeholder, and they have performed something.
C, stakeholder requirements.
Yeah. It's on a ball. So it's obviously just that person. So you're looking at only that. You can't, it could be functional, but you're observing that particular individual on that particular day. Oh, you guys are actually asking, yeah. Evaluate. So, as you can see here, and this is one of those tricky ones. This is around the behaviors. But as you can see here, now there's more complexity. But this question in itself is actually quite simple. Does anyone want to venture an answer on this one?
Would it be C?
Nope. Sorry, Dan.
It's okay.
It's
I just read it. I read it fast when you said it was simple, so I went right for it.
I'm going to say B.
Yeah. Everything's always going to be about neutral behavior as a BA. So always consider that. And you will notice in BABOK, BAs recommend solutions, but they don't really focus on fixing the solution. So just keep that. But as you can see, there's a level of complexity here. But now we get even what looks really simple, but isn't, which is going to make it easier for you. But can you see that there's multiple answers you could have? And if you don't know the language of BABOK, any of these can be correct, but which one is the most correct according to BABOK? Yes.
A business case?
Yep. Okay. Can anyone tell me why? Why would A be the answer? Why wouldn't we say business goals? Or we know we wouldn't say solution approach because that's not in BABOK at all. And definitely not project mandate because those terms aren't in. But why would we say business case over business goals?
Because it's giving you more than just a goal. It's giving you the reasoning and whatever as to why they want to make the change, not just, I want to make cell phone ordering easier, but we want to do these kind of things to improve that.
Mm-hmm.
It also takes into consideration multiple perspectives of the different stakeholders.
Yep. And there's a very important thing here, the how, right?
Yes,
So,
but from my point of view, if you need to document one change, what will trigger one change, one business case, one, let's say, situation which will make you to understand why will happen some change, why we come in this situation. Actually, it's one business case, one scenario to take you on this road.
Yep. Absolutely. And I do want you to also be aware that in your techniques, so chapter 10, business case is one of those. So anything around how do you do something? Thanks, Paige, for your contribution. Anything around how you're going to do something is really important. I've got one more. If you want to interrupt me with any questions, do let me know. But this is another hard one. And this is directly in your BABOK. So tell me which is the correct answer. I always have to go back and remember because correct. C. Can you tell us why?
Yes, because we have in stakeholder behavior underline this negative influence of stakeholders. And if you have some really high position stakeholder. I don't know, my English is not perfect, but
That's okay. That's okay.
you understand me. If
Yeah.
you have one stakeholder in really high position, he can have really negative influence in your project, and you need to manage him somehow.
Yeah. That's actually in BABOK 3.2, I believe. It might be 3.3 around governance, but
yes,
that those actual words are in there. So as you can see, if you don't go through BABOK, so you're 100% correct, well done. If you don't go through BABOK and actually understand some of the explanations, any of these answers could actually be a potential answer. Thanks, Dan and Hannah. Nice seeing all of you. So just be aware of all of that when you are preparing for your exam, because you do need to know some of the BABOK, but it will come to you as you do your practice exams and so forth. So yeah, anyway, happy learning, everybody. Any more questions? I'll say goodbye to everyone, but you're welcome to stay and ask more questions. I'm more than happy. I know that people's time is precious, so I'll say goodbye now. And then if you want to ask anything else, I'm more than happy to help. Hopefully you are all going to get certified real soon. No worries. It was really nice. It's not nice hearing from you guys in person. It was quite good to do. Thanks, everyone. Lovely voice, Stephen.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for all the work that you've done with the your website and your business. It's very refreshing to see what you've done. It actually provided me encouragement to go after this accreditation. I've been around for a little bit, actually on the side of retirement now, but been practicing various disciplines from programming right through to this, and have a great interest in enterprise architecture as well. So I thought I would start at the base stuff, deal with the business analyst stuff and work my way up or across or whatever. But I'm very interested in knowledge. So now that I have the time, I think I'll pursue some accreditation. And you have
a great radio voice. You could do awesome podcasts as well.
Actually, part of what I'm looking to do and prepare relative to these accreditations is to possibly learn enough and become confident enough to be able to teach at the community level. Teach what I know based on the many years of experience in the industry across various disciplines that I've been exposed to.
I think that's great. You know, it's always good because you actually learn a lot from teaching too. Teaching is one of the techniques of learning as well. So it's like I'm forced to teach and then I learn while I'm teaching, you know, so that's also a good way to go about it.
But again, thank you very much for your efforts. I look to become as successful as I can in getting the badges. I'm actually fired up now to try to see if I can acquire them. I was a little ambivalent about you know, when should I go about doing these things, because I felt I come from an environment where I guess experience trumped more than just getting, for me at least, trumped more than the badge. I wanted to know how things work, and that's the way I've come through from a scholastic point of view, as opposed to having the badge. And the information has been changing over the many years, but I'm at a point now where, you know, retirement is there. I'm just gonna do what I have to do with the badges, just for the prestige.
Yes, I think it's important. And like I said, when I watched that TED talk, you know, it's great that she did all of that, but if she couldn't tell people she was a black belt, you know, some of it, just the value just disappears, you know. So you just say, well, I've been practicing all of these years and I could be a black belt, you know. It's better to just be one. And put in that effort. So I think it's a good idea. I do advise you to have a look at what we have around the BA to BARC. There's also quite a few free podcasts and webinars and materials available. And that would take you, because like I like to explain that BAs go into the depth of business change and BARCs go into the breadth. And they are complementary roles, but they actually have different purposes. And
yes,
so that's part of the bridging that I like doing, because that's definitely not available easily. You know, you either one or the other, but sometimes you actually play multiple roles, and sometimes you've got to be looking at the breadth and other times at the depth.
absolutely.
So I do have some, just go have a look at some of those if you haven't already. I mean, obviously I haven't checked, but that might help with some of your future plans.
Yeah, and again, your platform again has provided me with the ability to focus and actually challenge myself to go after it, as opposed to what I was doing was my own research as to, you know, many different attempts for people to put out courses. I find yours the most friendly, and I say friendly meaning in terms of presentation of information, and it's absorbable, and also the actual style that you use is also motivating, at least for me. So I'm now ready to move forward with putting it together.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your feedback. I mean, it's hard because, you know, we don't often go online live at the same time. You know, it's mostly asynchronous, or, you know, I don't know what people are thinking until I get the end result, you know. So it is always good to get feedback, and I appreciate that.
You know, and your presentation and delivery is also is good too. It draws one in to actually say you can do this. So continue on with that positive message, and long life to you. And we'll be talking.
And you. So we'll
Thank you.
definitely chat soon. Okay. Thanks so much, Stephen. Have a great evening, I suppose.
You too. Yes, it is.
Right.
I'm getting ready to head out to the second half of my day, which is my split shift is going to be starting in about 40 minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. See you
All right.
soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.